This is When Science Speaks, a new web series profiling innovative and interesting people working in science and technical fields, from academia to industry to the nonprofit world. We explore how to be a powerhouse advocate for science and your research, how to advance your career in meaningful ways that make you happy, and how to push back on the ongoing assault on science and other related issues of interest happening in the world.
Hey everyone, it's Mark Bayer, and you are tuned to When Science Speaks. This episode of the show is brought to you by Bayer Strategic Consulting in Washington, D.C., which helps scientists get funding, gain influence, and build strategic relationships. Reaching those goals often involves effective translation of complicated topics to capture the attention of decision makers and general audiences. Are you interested in getting a free resource to help you do that? You can go to complexitymadeclear.com to get the 11 keys for translating complexity. That's complexitymadeclear.com to get your free infographic used by science communicators at major organizations to boil down but not dumb down complicated science and technical topics for key stakeholders. I am so pleased to welcome Paula White to the show today. Paula is the author of a wonderful book called Side B, Remix Your Leadership Style. She's got an unwavering passion for music that she applies in order to bring new perspectives and open new possibilities for emerging leaders. She has an innovative approach to drive results, increase productivity and profitability by unleashing a leader's natural skills and behaviors to bring their whole self into the role and leave a legacy impactful to the people they serve. A globally recognized sales leader, Paula has leveraged her talents to scale inside sales teams into multi-million-dollar standalone sales channels. She's helped organizations achieve 8 to 10% yearly compounded growth. She's got a demonstrated success in a wide variety of industries, including travel and tourism, investments, veterinary and healthcare distribution. Passion for education and leadership is a driving force behind Paula's success. She has a true desire to see success of others and transforms their ambitions into her own. And she focuses on fostering the talent of the next generation. Outside of work, she's an avid concert goer, and she's found joy both as a lyricist and co-producer of several songs. Wonderful to have you here, Paula. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, Mark, it's so great to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I'm very excited to just get in and start talking.
Wonderful. This is going to be so interesting and helpful for listeners. I want to start with an assumption that many of us make, whether we're presenting at work or we're even talking to folks in our personal lives. It's the idea that the information that we're discussing or the data that we're sharing speaks for itself, that we may be trying to motivate, encourage, or persuade, and then just talk exclusively about the logic or evidence as a way to make our case. And I've always believed, and listeners know, that approach overlooks a crucial dimension that drives how people actually make decisions in the real world. The data is necessary, of course, foundational, but it's not sufficient. And you seem to share this view. So I would love for you to talk about your perspective, bring together all of your experience and your expertise.
Oh, Mark, that's first of all, great question, because data is the foundation. That is where we start, but it's only one part of the equation, right? This quote by Stephen Covey was just recently shared with me. You can buy a person's hand, but you can't buy his heart. His heart is where enthusiasm and loyalty is. You can buy his back, but you can't buy his brain. There's where his creativity and ingenuity and resourcefulness are. So just think about that. We think about all the different things that data brings to the table. We get to see all the stuff that science and technology bring. But when we translate it and show people and motivate people, we have to have a little bit of heart to it. And I think part of my perspective here is, let's go off the music part of it. I'm a concert goer, is the old 45, the side A and the side B. So think of your side A as the data, the resume building skills, the business skills, and side B are those people skills. And that is what is really so important to develop, to ensure that we're bringing both our whole self into that role and into that presentation.
Yeah. Wonderful metaphor. And it's funny because vinyl is back. so many people are interested in vinyl again, just as I sold like this whole pile of records or gave half of them away. But it's so true. And that's a really apt way of describing it. And you also, as I mentioned, you've got extensive corporate experience and you've seen firsthand, both as a leader managing your own team and also being mentored by other senior people in the company, the perils of managing by data analytics alone.
Absolutely. Yes, over 30 years experience of building sales team, running 50 plus $1 million territories, right? It wasn't always like that. And if we can go back in time a little bit to when we were younger, music made our milestones. When we got our first car, when we went to the first prom, our first date, those sounds stay with us. And as we climb the corporate ladder, we're being creative and we're working hard. And all of a sudden, somewhere along that path, our music gets turned off, where we're only looking at data and we're only looking at technology that can make us more efficient and rise to this quicker efficiencies. But let me just share this story with you. When it comes to mentoring our people, we need to really understand that. Let me put it this way. I had a boss when I was first starting in my manager career, and I felt like I was out on an island. I was isolated, and I've had great bosses, I've had not so great bosses, but this one took me to lunch, took me under his wing, took me to lunch, and asked a lot of questions. And for me, him tapping into his curiosity, which is one of our side B emotions, tapping into that curiosity and understanding my department made me feel valued, made me feel important. And so ever since then, we were growing 8 to 10% over prior year each year. So I challenge leaders today to look at the data, but ask a lot of questions or find passion in what you're doing. And if we can do that, and we're not falling short of what a leader is.
Yeah. Thank you for that story. I want to follow up on the music metaphor because you use that throughout the book and also throughout your coaching practice, which we're going to get to in a moment. Maybe you could tell us a little bit more about the different styles of leadership and how you incorporate music and thinking about music, because it's interesting too, so many scientists also are adept musically. And I'd love for you to go in a little deeper on how you use musical metaphors and why.
Sure. So I want you to think about a band and when I went to a concert in Atlanta called The Struts, they were amazing, by the way. If you ever get an opportunity to see them, great band.
Yeah.
I went there hoping to get front row seats, forgetting that these quaint venues, the middle is called the mosh pit, right? So I had to climb up go upstairs to the balcony, and I got great seats. But during the concert, Mark, it was beautiful because all of a sudden I looked down and I couldn't take my eyes off of the interaction between the fans and the band. And that's really where this idea came about, is why can't leaders rock their leadership like musicians do with their fans and have that same kind of synergy? So then let's look at the band. What does a drummer do? Drummer do in a band? They keep tempo. They keep the song moving forward. So we created, through myself, a psychologist, a neuroscientist, and a few musicians, looking at what a drummer does. Then we looked at what would their side A business skill be. Most likely it would be a forward thinker, a visionary. And that's what my boss was. To their side B, being curious. Because if you're a forward thinker, visionary, what's the one thing you need to do in your side B to move that forward? is you've got to ask a lot of questions. You've got to be open-minded. You have to be inquisitive. So therefore, those traits all run in with this curiosity. So I have one for the drummer, the lead guitarist, all of the band members that you could think of. So that's where the metaphor came in. But now we can use it as a tool. Let's take the tool and understand what music does. A lot of people don't read books for reflection, and a lot of coaches give books for people to read so that they can reflect on. I read books for pleasure. I don't read it for reflection. And some people don't journal for reflection. Why not use music for reflection? Have you ever been in a car where you're sitting there, your favorite song comes on, and the right lyric to your mood pops up right away, and you start reflecting on how the day went, what was going on there, or even more so, singing at the top of your lungs, even though you don't have tinted windows.
A good reason to get tinted windows. Yeah, it really speaks to us.
Yeah. So music releases dopamine, serotonin, but it could release cortisol as well, depending on the music that you hear. We've heard of green sound, pink sound, brown sound, white sound. It really depends on what your frequency is. And so once you can tap into that, my suggestion to people is to really write down specific moods that they want to get out of or get into. Do they want to be happy and joyful? What's one song that's going to take you? Do they need to focus? What's one song going to take you there? You're interrupted and you need to get back to that place where you are. What's that 3-minute song that's going to re-energize you? Or even having a team building meeting or a board meeting. Start with a song and get everybody to break down the walls and really be involved.
Yeah, absolutely. And I used music at the beginning of a facilitation I did a few weeks ago, actually, just to set the mood, right? The very beginning as people are coming in and all that kind of thing. I had forgotten about that actually until you mentioned it. I want to delve now into your book. You've written this fantastic book. It's Side B, Remix Your Leadership Style. We're going to have a link to where you can learn more about, where you can purchase the book in the show notes that accompany the episode. And the book addresses a lot of the topics and more that we're talking about now. Tell us about your book, what motivated you to write it, and the major themes that you'd like readers to take away from.
Funnily enough, I've had this book on my head for about 5 to 6 years. And it's because I'm dyslexic, right? And I remembered using music to help me get through school, get through college, get through swim meets, all of those things. And as I said before, music got turned off in my career. So why not bring music back into our life? And through this book, you'll see each chapter begins with a through line with our main character, Henry, who understands where his career has taken him to, because as leaders, we get very involved and we are on 24/7. We need those breaks. And if it's just a 3-minute break in music, that's what's important. When I thought about writing this book, it was all in my head. And I thought, no one's going to want to hear my story about how music helped me create an environment of creativity, innovation, productivity through music. And I was talking to a few people and they're like, no, we want to know. So that's where I went. I interviewed a lot of leaders to do this. I was going to write their words, but ended up writing my own. I threw a whole book out and started with the one that you have now that's in your hands. It's just great. But I guess the 3 themes I'd want to talk about is just remember, every leader has a side A and a side B. And we have to use both of them to leave a positive legacy with the people that we serve.
So powerful. Thank you. Thank you for that. Many times we hear about emotional intelligence and its importance. And of course, I'm a big believer in that. And empathy is often highlighted as an important aspect of someone's EQ, their level of emotional intelligence. And as you point out in the book and also in your professional work, empathy is key, but there are many really important components that go into emotional intelligence and that we should be surfacing and thinking about and trying to put into action as they fit or are suitable for our own kind of overall persona. Can you talk about that? I know that's a big theme that you are interested in and that you emphasize.
It really is, because we talk about empathy and vulnerability so much, but some people don't inherently have that deep within them. You can learn it, you can do all of those things, but if you really want to start being the unique leader you are, finding that those deep traits that you were brought up to have, that you were born with, that your environment and your family helped create for you, the 10 personas that I talked about are your side B are curious, passionate, trustworthy, certain, sincerity, grace, kindness, optimistic, courage, and ethical. And when I'm ethical, a lot of people go, well, I have ethics. I'm talking being ethical in communication.
If folks are listening and they're wondering how they could surf some of these elements in their own persona and activate them in their interactions with others, what recommendations do you have?
First and foremost, I would say think within yourself. And for me, listen to music that you had when you were your favorite song when you were maybe in your 7, 8, 9-year-old range, something in high school, early college, and your favorite song now. Look at those themes and see what points out to you, right? Because I say curious, but curious has traits to it, like we talked about, the open reflective, the experimenting, the self-improvement. So those traits are inherent. But I also have on my website for $40, if somebody wants to take just the basic assessment, they can find out which one is their top assessment that they can take right from my website.
Great. Okay. And we'll have a link to that in the show notes along with the episode. If in addition to that, in addition to taking the survey, is there one thing that you recommend listeners could do today to make progress on this journey to a more, say, keen awareness and use of their own emotional intelligence?
I think the biggest thing is seeing the unseen and starting with the moods that you have and adding the one song that will help you either jump in or out of that mood, whichever you need to do, and create yourself a playlist so that it is there for you at all times. So you're not scrambling trying to find it and losing that mood. So you have it right there for you. Now, those songs are going to change, and that's okay. We change with each season in our life. But when we get those deep feelings of trust and experimenting and openness and tapping into that unique side of ourselves, we show up better for the people we serve. And that's really what it's all about.
And those will be the last words of the episode, Paula. So wise, specific, actionable, and just a lot to think about as well. So a wonderful conversation. I really appreciate you setting aside time to come on the show today.
It was so much fun. And Mark, you know me, I simply adore you and I love the work that you're doing. So anytime I can help you, let me know.
Thank you, Paula. Likewise. And listeners, thank you so much for being along on this episode of When Science Speaks. And I hope you'll be back next time for the next episode of When Science Speaks.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to click subscribe. Check us out on the web at whensciencespeaks.com, and we'll see you next time.